Chris and Dan's show, how's it going? I just read this book written by Chris Heller. He's our guest. And Greg Reed as well. It's on Amazon. I did leave a review, Chris, on Amazon, and we're going to get into the book. It's a quick read. You're supposed to be able to read it in an hour. I took 2, but that's because I'm a slow reader. But Chris Heller, look, if you're not in the real estate space, you may not know. And I think it's important that we learn, like, no matter what industry you're in, you learn from leaders within those industries. And Chris Heller is one of those guys I've been following since 2013. So Chris, when I'm in life sciences with Chris Sauber, the co-host, but I had a little stint where I was like 2 years. I wanted to try, like, just on the side to be a realtor. I learned a couple of things. I learned you can't be a realtor on the side. If you want to be a successful realtor, you better get your ass in there and, like, work 80 hours a week. So that's one thing I learned, because I couldn't give up clinical research and still in the industry with Chris Sauber. But I worked for Keller Williams Irvine, and Chris Heller was one of the owners, and everybody around the office kept talking, "Oh, Chris Heller, all this stuff. You're like a legend," but not just in that office, throughout the entire company. Then he became CEO of the entire company. And then you and I started doing some interviews here and there, like internal for Keller Williams. And then I got to know you a little better. And I was always watching your videos. I watched they did like a documentary on you, Chris, where somebody, I don't know, must have been like 2010. Somebody followed you around the office and you were like cold calling. Do you know which video I'm talking about? It was like a documentary.
I remember it. I remember it very well. And I think the night before I went to a concert and it was out really late. So I remember that.
But I think if that video is still up, everyone should watch it, because it shows you, like, the commitment you have to take to dominate any industry, and the thoughts, okay? To dominate thoughts, the thoughts you need to dominate any industry. Anything Chris Heller, I mean, I saw, is this your first book?
It is. It is. I thought about many times. I was on a podcast like this about a year ago, and the host said, "Hey, Chris, when are you going to write a book?" And I said, I've thought about it, but I don't know. And Greg Reed, who's the co-author, was on the podcast, and I said I'd have to pick Greg's brain because he's written like 40 books. And so 2 days later, Greg called me up and said, "All right, I've been sitting on an idea for a book. I got the title and the URL. Do you have content?" And I said, "I got content." And so he said, "I'll show you how to do it. And we'll be co-authors." I said, "Awesome."
So the story, all that stuff, this is like your manifestations, right?
Yeah. Basically what I did was, the book is it's a business parable. And early in my career, like in my 20s, I've always read a lot of books. And in my 20s, I read some books that were really impactful, and they were all that style of book, where it was a story that had a lot of lessons and knowledge and wisdom in them that really impacted me. And so, I wanted to do that same type of story. So it's for entrepreneurs, for leadership, for anyone just getting going. It's a story about two guys, a mentor and a mentee, and how they go through this journey and the lessons they learn. So I just took all the lessons, not all. I took 12 chapters worth of lessons, or 10 chapters, and put one into each chapter that has been impactful in my life and my career, and that I hope that others will benefit from.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Chris.
So I have a couple questions. One for Dan first. So you said initially, Dan, that you gave a review for the book.
I gave a review. Yeah.
So just everybody, I'm sure, wants to know: is it a 5-star review?
Oh yeah, of course.
1 star?
No, it's 5-star. Of course, it's 5-star.
So it's definitely worth reading.
By the way, they're all 5 stars so far, and I didn't want to be the only guy to like put 4 or something less than 5. So of course it's 5, and it's a 5-star book.
Just making sure.
We want honest feedback.
You'll eventually get it. Look, if we learn anything from writing this thing, we wrote this book on clinical research. At first, you get like all the fans to write. You get like bunch of 5-star. And then like a year goes by and you start getting like 3s. Then you get like some 1s.
Yeah. Yep.
But as long as you're above 4.5, you're good. People are gonna buy the book regardless. So
this is true.
Yeah, this is this is true. But no, Chris Heller, I've been like fanboying over you since I started at Keller Williams. And then Joey. Do you know Joey Finrow?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, see, Joey's starting to make a name for himself. So Joey, he's always was telling me about like level 7 agent, be a level 7 agent, and you were always the model for this, for anybody trying to do that. Can you just, for the non-real estate audience, can you talk to us a little bit about when you decided that you wanted to build a passive real estate business where you're actually a realtor and you're operating? Like, we're not talking real estate investment. You do plenty of that. Maybe we'll get into some of that too. But like actual realtor stuff, it's not easy. Like I said, I couldn't do it part-time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, like for real estate agents or anyone who's self-employed, a 1099 individual, where you're on 100% commission, it's hard to build a repeatable, duplicatable business. That's why very few do it. I was on a mission to do it, and just took a lot of common sense and a lot of things that I observed in other businesses and built it into my real estate business. So, for example, when I first got going, my wife at the time was a nurse and worked in a doctor's office. And most real estate agents operated like they were the doctor, the nurse, the insurance biller, the receptionist, the lab tech. They did all those jobs. And they can only do so much. And they couldn't do any of them great because they're wearing 10 different hats during the day. So I said, wait a minute, I should operate like a no pun intended, like a doctor operates. I should do the important things and then hire people to do the other things. So at the end of my first year, I hired an assistant, and I was in an office of 70, 80 agents, and I was one of the youngest ones. And everyone looked at me like, who the heck are you? Like, and because back then no one had assistants. But I was like, okay, wait a minute. I could pay someone back then $5 an hour to stuff envelopes, answer phones, do paperwork, and have more time to go out and sell houses. And that was the first step in creating a business that was based on systems and processes and leveraging other people. So ultimately, in 2010, when I became the president of an executive in a real estate company, I was able to have that business continue on. And here we are in 2022, and that business is still continuing on, still generating revenue for me and for all the people on that team that are working there, and then leveraging that into other real estate businesses. But it's developing a business to a level. Again, you could be a house painter or landscaper or anything else, but then putting the systems and the people in place to where you can then move on and have that business continue to thrive and grow.
So would you say sales, selling houses, would you say that's the sales techniques, sales tactics are similar to, say, selling cars, selling dental equipment, whatever you might be selling? Are the techniques the same?
No, that's a really good question, Chris. I've always said you can't sell a house, right? People buy houses and they buy them if they like them, and if they don't like them, they don't buy them. There's nothing I can say or do.
So they sell themselves.
Yeah. The sales comes in where I'm selling myself and I'm selling my services. Mm-hmm. So as a potential buyer or seller, you're going to know a lot of real estate agents because there's so many of them out there. And so what's going to cause you to say, Chris, yes, you're my guy, or yes, I'm going to hire you, or yes, you're going to represent me. So the sales part comes in two areas. One is selling my services to you as a consumer and persuading you as to why you should use me as your agent. And the other is generating business, generating leads. So as an agent, you either wait for business to fall in your lap or you go out and generate it. So, whether that's making phone calls or knocking on doors or leveraging social media or online marketing or whatever tactics you're using, that's also similar to other sales type jobs. But the product is
It's
selling
you.
the product is different. Yeah. The
Yeah,
product is me and my services.
yeah, you're the product compared to selling a car. It's the car is the product. In this case, you're the product. Though I would argue that I think in any form of sales, you are selling yourself to a degree. If somebody doesn't like you, they're not working with you typically.
Yeah.
So that's true of all sales.
The difference is, in someone who's bought a lot of cars over the years, I don't have to necessarily like the car salesperson.
Mhm.
As long as he has what I want and I can negotiate the price I want,
Yep.
I'm probably never going to see him or talk to him again after those few
Mhm.
hours that I spend there.
Mhm.
Whereas, with as big a purchase as a home, as emotional purchase as a home is, or selling a home is, it it matters. If there's not a high level of trust and rapport, you're probably not going to do business with that person.
Absolutely. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree.
And these are things that, like what you said about building your business. Like Chris and I are actually working, Chris Sauber and I are actually working on doing that in our life sciences company. And I think every year we're like chipping away at it. I mean, we at least understand the importance of systems, and we may not have it like the equivalent of a level 7 realtor business, but we're probably like at a level 5, maybe 6 where we're at with our life science. So what was the hardest level for you to get past? Like, were you ever stuck on one level? And then can you just explain what that level actually means?
Yeah, so there's a couple of as you're growing a business, there's a couple areas that are typically the more challenging ones. And the first level is when you hire your first people, and where you're letting go and delegating things that you've done yourself, and you understand the importance and how critical they are to your business, and now you're going to entrust someone else. So then the key points become hiring talented people and training them very well, and then treating them really well. So that's one area where a lot of agents stumble, and where I stumbled many times because I just wasn't hiring the right people. I didn't treat them well, and I didn't provide adequate training. So then once you get through that, um, then it's continuing to develop. I'll speak for myself. For me, it was continuing to develop myself as a manager and a leader, and to be able to attract and retain great people, and then to make sure that we were developing the systems that would allow me to keep giving away more and more of the job that I was doing. And ultimately, then the last big hurdle is that final step of saying, okay, I'm going to let go of the negotiations. I'm going to let go of going on the appointment to meet with you about selling your home. And I'm going to step back and become an owner versus a player on the team. And that's where a lot of people. Now I don't know that I would have gotten there if I didn't have an opportunity that I wanted to go pursue that required me to get there. So when I was offered the opportunity to go build a real estate company globally, that was a big opportunity, a big challenge, and one that was very interesting and exciting to me. And that forced me to then, prepare my business and my clients for taking that final step of stepping out of the day-to-day operations.
So these opportunities came, or you sought them out intentionally in order to force yourself to get through those levels.
Yeah, if I sought them out, and it's funny you say it that way. I hadn't thought about that. I probably subconsciously I sought them out or created them. It wasn't something I consciously did. In other words, I didn't have a goal to go do this or go do that. But I always operated under the belief that if I got uncommon results, that would create opportunities. And throughout my career, that kept happening. So it kept giving me more and more evidence of
Mm.
that if I achieved you know beyond the ordinary, that opportunities would come from that, and that's exactly what happened.
And you and Chris, if you get any questions, just feel free, man. You've been doing good, but you really like, I guess, blew up before social media. So these days, I think it's somewhat easier to make it, or like you said, to create what did you say, uncommon results. I think it's easier to do that now with social media. I mean, you can create like a podcast that's maybe get some attention. A lot of people are afraid to do certain things, so if you do those, you'll get the uncommon results. But you did this before social media, so your uncommon results was literally like putting in the work and getting the sales up. No, like there's nothing. There
Yeah.
was no other thing that you could do.
Yeah, it was. There were no shortcuts or no, you know, new things. It was like a lot of people worked hard. So yeah, absolutely, it was hard work. It was like, a borderline superhuman effort. But then it was taking not only the hard work, but then adding in, you know, skills and adding in those things, and that took hard work too, right? I wasn't born a skilled salesperson or a skilled real estate agent. I developed myself into one, so I practiced. You know, I how many real estate agents practice their scripts every day and their dialogues and their presentations? I did that every day, um, and every day for 26 years. So it
Wow.
wasn't that I was an overnight result. It was
So
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say um, it was being very consistent and very persistent, and then putting in the time.
So I haven't purchased or sold a lot of houses, but I would say my biggest complaint in terms of real estate agents is unresponsiveness.
Yeah,
Um, Trying to find a real estate agent, they don't call you back, or if you have a concern, can't get a hold of them.
yeah,
Would you say what you're discussing as far as having your scripts and everything's worked out in that regard, is that more important? Because to me, I was at certain points in time, the first agent I talk to is who I'm going with. If they'll
yeah.
just answer
So
my call.
that's very common. Here's what knowing your scripts do. It does a couple things. Number one, it gives you confidence. Just like preparing, like if you have to give a talk or a speech or you're in a play, the more you prepare, the more confident you are.
Mhm.
What stops a lot of agents from doing the things they should do is they aren't confident. They don't know what to say, or they're afraid, what if I get asked this, or what if I get asked that? Now, you also bring up a very common thing, and I there were two things I saw. I was too new to see that the thing you just mentioned, Chris. But the two things I saw right away that could have me stand head and shoulders above the majority of the agents I saw was if I just did what I said I was going to do, and if I told people the truth, I would I would be different than most of the agents. We could simply add to that. The third thing is if you just respond in a timely manner, you'd be different than most of the agents. Um,
Mhm.
and so, I guess you could say the bar was low. Yeah, but not a lot of people were doing things to raise the bar, and me and a lot of other great agents have done that.
You guys both share the same name, Chris. You guys actually are similar because I think, and then Chris is very like no BS, very pragmatic approach, and what you just said like is basically resonates the same. Like you did what you're gonna say. So not to give away the whole book, but one of the chapters under promise, over deliver, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree
Chris,
more.
I know. That's why I'm telling you. Chris says this. This Chris says that all the time during our sales calls. I tend to be the one trying to hype things up. I think because I'm naturally like positive and optimistic. But Chris is like, no, no. You know what? This is actually how it's going to be, and it works. It's a strategy that works. What made you realize that strategy, Chris?
Um, Really good question. So early on, so I don't like unpleasant things. Like when things went bad, I did not like that. So in a real estate transaction, there's so much that can go wrong, and some of it's self-induced, some of it's out of your control. But I wanted to do everything I could to minimize that. Um, for a lot of reasons. Number one, because it never felt good. Number two, my livelihood depended on it, and having happy clients meant repeat and referral business. And having unhappy clients meant I'm out of business. So one of the ways that I determined was the easiest way to accomplish that was to set expectations. Everyone has expectations. If I don't set them, the chances of me meeting or exceeding someone's expectations are like slim and none. It's like, I might get lucky, like might get hit by lightning, but if I don't know what your expectations are, how can I exceed them? So, the best way for me to know what your expectations are is for me to set them. So for me to be able to say, hey, Dan, here's what's going to happen next. Or, hey, Dan, when there's a showing on the property, here's how I'm going to get feedback and here's how I'm going to communicate to you. Or Dan, here's how often I'm going to communicate with you. Or maybe simple things like you asking me a question and I go, you know what, that's a good question. I know how to get the answer to that. I should be able to do that by Thursday. I will call you back on Thursday. Now, I say that fully knowing that I can get the answer sooner. And then I do, and then call you on Wednesday. Now, what did I do? I set the expectation. I'm going to get the answer for it. It's going to be on Thursday. And now I've called you on Wednesday. I've exceeded your expectation. It's a little, I used to think of it as opportunities to become the hero. Like, how can I become the hero? And those are little things that you become a little hero by doing things that exceed people's expectations. And now you end up with happy people instead of unhappy people.
I like it.
I know.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Chris's are very similar. Chris is also like a guy, both of you Chris's are guys who don't get too high or too low from my experiences. Obviously, I have way more interactions with Chris Sauber than Chris Heller, but I've worked with you enough, Chris Heller, to see the same. Like, and you even talk about it in your book where you say don't get too attached to your outcomes.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that. Maybe not the getting attached to your outcomes, but with I guess not getting emotional, because I'm naturally an emotional person. I think I've gotten better, but I think that's just something you have to work at.
Yeah, and I can help you with that. So I'll share two things.
Okay.
And you mentioned one of them, Dan, and that is keeping your emotions within whatever standards that you choose helps with that. If you don't do that, your emotions can go way high, and whenever something goes way high, there's going to be an equal downturn. It's like a sugar rush and a sugar crash, or a caffeine high and a caffeine crash. Same with emotions. So I had an early coach and mentor that used to say, hey, keep your emotions between the lines. Don't let them get too high. Don't celebrate too much, and don't get too down. And that resonated with me, and that worked really well for me because I was sort of naturally that way anyways. The other piece is when you're attached to an outcome, you feel it emotionally, and it impacts you emotionally. If you're committed to an outcome, it's different than being attached to it. So I'll give you an example, a real estate example. I'm selling your home. We're under contract, and it's going to close. I am committed that it close on time. I'm committed that you have a great experience. I'm committed that I do everything the right way, and that that you get exactly what you want. Now, things could happen out of my control that stop that from happening. I'm not going to be attached to that, and it takes work, and it takes focus, and it takes a conscious decision. But if I get attached to it, it affects me emotionally. I feel it in my gut. If something bad happens, it could take me out of the game for weeks. So being committed versus attached is a really important key. Another example is, since you guys are both wearing baseball hats, a baseball player, right? I was watching a game last night, and as a baseball player, if you go up to bat and you strike out, which is not the outcome you want, right? That's the bad outcome if you're a batter. The next time you go up to bat, if you're dwelling on, if you were attached to your last at bat and what happened, and your next at bat, your likelihood for success is minimal, because you're focused on what happened, the bad thing that happened last time you're at bat. the best hitters, they learn from what happened and they're committed to get better. And next time they go up to bat, they're not dwelling on that they struck out last time and gosh, I can't strike out again. I got to, they're focused on what they need to do to get the outcome they want. So being committed to an outcome versus being attached to an outcome are two different things that impact you completely different.
So that was short memory. Short memory. Well, in the baseball analogy there, have a short memory.
Yeah.
And Chris, a former semi-pro baseball player. By the way, Chris Heller, you gotta play poker. Do you?
You know what? I don't. I know.
Oh, you'd probably be good.
I'd probably, I would have a good poker face. I mean, I've been told that many times. So I guess different from a good face for radio, but not showing anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very different strategies, though, Dan. You have to have a long memory in poker.
But still, you can't be committed to your, you can't
that
be
part's true.
Connected to your outcome.
Don't be emotionally attached.
Yeah, emotionally attached. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Same with negotiating.
Well, Chris negotiates all our budgets, all of them.
Yeah, well, good. He should.
You should.
not the emotional guy.
No, definitely not. The way I used to negotiate them was like, look, let's just get everything 40% higher than it is, and I'm good. Chris goes like line by line. I don't know how he does it, man. That's, by the way, the last part of our business that we have to outsource, like to truly systematize it, and that might be the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree.
When did you, Chris Heller, outsource like the actual negotiating? Because that's not till like level 5 or 6, right?
Yeah. So every year I had a goal to sell more homes. I had a goal to make more money, and to do that, I had to sell more homes. And so there's only so much time, and so I would have to delegate and give away parts of the job to focus on the most important things. And I finally got to the point where, besides owning and running the team, generating new business and presenting and negotiating were the things I did. So the next one I delegated was negotiations. And the way I did that is I had someone listen to me do it all day long. And then I'd put that person in positions where he had to do it, where I'd say, hey, let's say I talk to the client, instead of me calling the agent, I'd say, hey, I want you to call the agent, and I want you to say this. Or, we get a response back. Hey, I want you to call, Mr. Seller and say this and say it this way. And say, hey, Chris wanted me to call you and let you know that we got a response, and here's what the response is. Here's our options, and here's what Chris recommends. And all of us, over time, he got more and more in depth. And then there'd be times where I'd walk by the office where he was, and I'd hear him talking, and I'd hear my words coming out of his mouth. Like he'd be saying things exactly the way I'd say them. And then it's like, okay, this is, I guess
this is good.
I'm not so important anymore.
That's awesome. But that initial fear is like, you know what? Only I could do this. Like nobody else going to do it as good as me, which is probably true. But you would accept like 90% of you, or do you go for like you have to be 100% like I would do this?
No. I think look, there's certain things when you delegate that it's got to be 100%. Right. There's other things that, hey, if they get it 90% right, you're still going to be fine.
Yeah.
There was a book I read a long time ago. I think it was called "If It Ain't Broke, Break It." And there was a chapter.
It's a good title.
There was a chapter called like 90% is okay. Like you don't have to. Things don't have to be 100% perfect. There's certain things that do, right? If you're a surgeon, the patient living, you got to be 100% on that. But there's other things that, hey, if they get it 90% right, everyone's still going to be okay.
Yeah, it's worth the trade-off of more time and more growth on your end. I guess the last thing that you would outsource would be like the growth and I'm guessing the growth and driving in new business.
Yeah, and that was the last thing, and so I I did two things. One is I hired people to do it, but knowing that they probably wouldn't be as effective as me. And then the other is I used capital or money to generate business. And the way I did specifically was in starting radio and television ads in San Diego, which I still do to this day.
You still have, right? Through in San Diego. Heller the home seller. Is that still the brand?
Yeah, that's the brand.
Chris, if you ever want to move to San Diego, man, that's your guy. Although Joey Finro would be pissed.
That's all you. San Diego. San Diego.
Yeah, I'm moving back. I'm in Yuma, Arizona right now, but I'm gonna be in San Diego probably in 5 years. All right. Now what about, okay, here's my thing. Like when you outsource all this stuff, I guess my biggest fear and other people's biggest fear is number one, and I think this relates to you saying, okay, well, you got to be good to the employees to keep them. My problem has always been with employees that I'm too nice, and I don't know. I guess Chris Sauber would be like the brake when I'm the gas, but both of our fear is
We're both, in my opinion. Sorry to interrupt. We're both. You're nicer than me, but I'm too nice too. I think.
right, but that's
To a
not
degree.
even our fear. That's our fear of like, okay, well, they're gonna slack eventually. When they get too comfortable, they're gonna slack. That's a
Right.
fear that somehow we could still live with. The bigger fear is we're gonna teach these people how to do what we do, and why are other people gonna need us? They can just go start their own. How'd you get over that fear? You had to have had that thought cross your mind.
Yeah. So I wouldn't I don't know that it was a fear. It was a concern and something I was aware of. So one of the things that I did in every job I was hiring someone for, I tried to find people that were as good or better than me. Because if they weren't, then I didn't feel like I could ever really let go of that. Right? If they're as good as me or better than me, I can let go of that, right? I don't need to be I can hire someone who's better at paperwork than I am, or better at this than I am. So hiring talented people is important. Now, you could say, okay, Chris, if you hire talented people, then they're just going to do what you do and go out. So when I was interviewing people, one of the questions that I often asked was about their background. And when they were kids, like, did they play sports? And if they did play sports, did they play team sports or individual sports? Because I was looking for people who were familiar with being part of a team and who liked and thrived on being on a team. Now, if I said, hey, 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing? And if they say, hey, I want to be just like you, I want to do what you're doing, and then my response was usually, hey, you shouldn't wait 5 years. You should go do that now. You don't need to join me. I can point you in the right direction, tell you how to do it. But you're probably not going to be a good fit for our team, because I'm looking for people that want to be part of something that is going to that they like winning together and achieving together and growing together. And so I'm looking for like the right type of person beyond just their talent level. Now, how do you keep them? Is you keep providing opportunities for them to keep growing and achieving whatever goals they have. And then look at those goals are going to be financial goals, are going to be goals to grow and to learn and take on more responsibility. So that means that the business probably needs to keep growing to be able to provide those opportunities. So it takes all those pieces working together.
Mm. I like
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do too. That was like probably the best answer I ever got from that kind of question.
Mm-hmm. You're looking for team players, not their own hero.
Not their own hero, but it's in real estate. It's so tough, man. I think in our industry, Chris Sauber, clinical research, you have more team players. I think in real estate is it seems like so cutthroat. Like when I was in there, I mean, everyone at least has a delusion that they could be Chris Heller, even though like only maybe 2% can do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, the other thing that I learned early on was, don't pay attention to what everyone else is doing. Like, know what you need to do, put the blinders on, and go do it. I always use the analogy of 100-yard dash. If you ever watch, a sprint, inevitably, if a guy's looking to his left and right over his shoulder, he's the one that gets passed. The winners almost never looks either way; they just go. So don't. I never worried about the competition other than the one in the mirror, and that's what I focused on.
It's the toughest opponent, that one in the mirror. We
Yeah.
got this book link underneath. We're not gonna go through every chapter. You guys gotta buy it, but trust me, it's a short read. I went through the things that I think resonated with me, right? And you just said one about you don't worry what others think as well.
Yep.
I want to get into when you left. So because you still have your real estate business, Heller the Home Seller.
Yep.
You went to be CEO of a huge company, Keller Williams. You were the CEO for what, 2 years, 3 years, something like that?
Almost 2.5.
Almost 2.5 years. Did you do that? Like, did you have that as a personal challenge? Because I would guess the bigger the company is, the less of a entrepreneur it takes to run it. Did you do that just because you were curious, or?
No, so I went from being an agent to an executive role. I was the president of the worldwide division, so I was building Keller Williams outside of North America. And when I first got in that role, I remember this. I was having lunch with someone in San Diego, and they said, "What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now?" My response was, 5 years from now, I want to have done such a good job in what I'm doing now that I would be that they would consider me an obvious person to be running a company like this. So I didn't have a goal of I'm going to be the CEO and I'm going to do whatever it takes to become the CEO. I never even thought about that. What I thought about was just doing so good that an opportunity is going to come, or someone would go, "Yeah, this guy is like the obvious choice." And that's now, even you don't lose being an entrepreneur or anything else. There's just new things that get added, right? Because even big companies can be entrepreneurial in their culture or in their style or in their tactics. But there's a whole lot of other things that get added to it, right? I mean, when you're leading a large company, you have to learn how to succeed through others. You have to learn how to lead at a high level. You have to be effective at those things to achieve the company's goals. You can't. It's not going to be on your shoulders to do all those things. You'll fail. So those were new experiences. Yeah, even when I went to work as the president of that newly formed entity, I had to. I was just used to getting stuff done, and now I had a legal department that I had to work through, and a marketing department that I had to work with, and those were new experiences and new skills that I had to develop.
Mm. Would you go back to being a CEO of a big company like that again?
I don't look. I've been the CEO of two large companies. Okay, so the simple answer is, would I? Yes, but there's a lot of things that would have to be there for me to do that. Um, through experiences, I have learned, and I think most people have learned that have gone through lots of experiences, that the most important thing is not what you're doing, but who you're doing it with. So for me to go into that role again, I'd have to really like who I was doing it with, whether it was the owner of the company or the board. I'd have to have complete trust and respect for the people I was doing it with. If any of those things were missing, it doesn't matter how big the opportunity, how much money, I know it wouldn't work for me. And so I hesitated when you asked that question, because there's a lot of things that would need to be there for me to do it. But yeah, if all those things were there, yes, I would consider that.
Chris Soper, any questions? Because I got so many, man. Chris Heller, thank you so much for your time. You have a little bit more time?
Yeah, I can spend a few more minutes.
All right.
Well, I mean, the first thing that came to mind, I don't want to ask, so I don't want to put
Why
Chris on
not?
the spot. I don't want to put him on the spot.
I can ask one. It's not gonna put you on the spot, but
You can always ask. I may not answer, but you can.
Okay, well, okay, fine. I'll ask. So, I assume from what you stated there that you had these experiences; they were lacking in those areas in some capacity, um, and that's where the is most likely why the relationship ended, right?
Yeah.
With Keller Williams and what was the other company you were CEO of?
A Mellow Home, which is part of Loan Depot. Yes and no. So yeah, I have definitely experienced the things that I don't want. It's like a relationship. When my first marriage ended, I was really clear on what I didn't want. Like I'm never, I
Yeah,
do not
it's
want
amazing
this.
how that works, huh?
Yeah, I do not want this. I do not want that. So you learn what's important to you, and so then as you go forward, well, hopefully you learn what's important to you, and then hopefully as you go forward, you use what you learn to make decisions. Um, so yeah, I was in situations that there wasn't alignment or there wasn't trust or whatever those things were not there. Um, and so then you take what you take away from that is, okay, these things are actually really important to me. And I
Mhm.
won't put myself in that type of situation again, or I'll make sure whatever situation I go into that those things don't exist so I can spend my time and energy on the mission or on what I'm trying to accomplish and not on dealing with those things that are unproductive or that I don't like dealing with.
Absolutely makes sense.
see, he didn't dodge. Chris Heller doesn't dodge questions. One of the things I really like about you, Chris Heller, and actually Chris Sauber, you guys are very alike. Come to think of it, but you don't have neither one of you guys have fake enthusiasm that so many salespeople. I think it's the default for so many salespeople, especially when they're new, is like, oh, I'm just gonna like always be smiling with my voice and telling people like, it's the best day of my life talking to you. And I never got that from either of you. And I think I don't know why salespeople do that because it only maybe fools them. Like the other person, you're not fooling them. You just met this person and you're like ecstatic to be talking to them.
Yeah, you're not fooling them. I do think there's look at enthusiasm sells, and if you have nothing else, being enthusiastic is better than nothing. I I had to generate that because that's not my personality style or my behavioral style. So I had to remind myself to smile, and I had to
Yeah.
remind myself to do that. I was very driven and very focused, but you couldn't. That was on the inside. That
Yeah.
didn't always come out on the outside.
But I think so. What I'm talking about is like fake enthusiasm, where you could just smell it off the other guy because you have real enthusiasm. You, both of you, Chris's, have real enthusiasm that when people actually have a conversation with you, they could tell, okay, this guy's serious. He's about his business. It's not like this fake, superficial stuff where basically this person's telling everybody the same thing.
Yeah, it's authenticity
Yeah,
is how I think about it.
there you go.
Yeah, being
Uh,
authentic, authentic.
last topic, I guess. Do you invest in real estate personally?
I do, I do. That's been and is a passion of mine and has been. I bought my first place when I was 20 years old, um,
Wow.
and it's my grandfather was a real estate investor, and although he died when I was 12, I was at least old enough to recognize that that is a good way to create wealth. And then as you get older, you learn that's one of the best ways to create wealth. So being in the business, there's too many agents in the business that don't invest and haven't and don't are so focused on just their next commission check that they miss opportunities. And I viewed selling real estate as a way to create the income to then be able to go invest, and something I still actively do.
Where Chris and I are very interested in that stuff. Do you think? Are you worried about the California exodus? Do you think that's going to have a negative impact on California homes? home prices?
There's been that's happened before, in and maybe it's a bit before your time, Dan, but when the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall came down, Southern California, where I was born and raised, was not a diversified economy. It was very heavily weighted in aerospace and the defense industry. And when that happened, a lot of those big companies went away very fast. And there was actually the first time in my lifetime back then, which was like around 1990 or so, that that there were a net loss of people in California, more people leaving than coming, and I had not experienced that before. So we've been through that before. The one thing that we have in California, and I'll speak to the Southern California where I'm from, is it's a highly desirable area. I mean, San Diego is arguably the best weather in the world. It is. You have the Pacific Ocean. You have a finite amount of land there. It's a super desirable area. So yes, economic cycles happen, business cycles happen. Prices don't always go up in anything, in any commodity, and certainly in real estate. So the important thing about real estate, and this is maybe sort of where you were thinking, and probably maybe the next question you'd ask is it a good time to buy or invest? My answer has been the same since 1983 when I got my real estate license, and that is, it is if you get a good buy, right? So regardless of what's going on in the market, if you get a good buy, it's a good time, and if you don't, it's not a good time. So now, that being said, you also want to look at where things are in the cycle and what your goals and your plans are. I have several properties in Southern California right now, and I asked myself several months ago, are there any that I own that I don't want to hold for the next 10 years? And I asked myself that question with the thought in mind that there's going to be an adjustment at some point, because prices just can't go through the roof like they've been going for as long as they've been going. And if they adjust, 2 years from now or a year from now or whenever it is, and prices drop, am I okay holding it for the long run for prices to come back up and then to keep going beyond where they were? Because every time we've had a downturn, they've come back and gone up even higher than they were before the last downturn, right? If you look historically in our whole country, there's very few markets or cities in this country where you can't say that, over time, real estate has not gone up. And so then it becomes an issue of how long do you plan to hold it, and is it making money for you regardless of what the value is? Are you making, do you have positive cash flow? Can you hold the place? I have a longtime client who texted me last night. Now, again, I haven't been since 2010. I haven't been in the day-to-day operations of my real estate business there, but I still have clients that will contact me. He said, look, I can pull out my house in San Diego has gone up a significant amount. I can pull out that equity, go buy more rentals in Ohio, which is what he has. What am I not thinking about this right? I said, like, if you're getting positive cash flow and you're able to service the debt that you're going to now have on your home by pulling that equity out, regardless of what happens in the short term, in the long run, and he's doing this as a long-term strategy, you'll be fine. Now, just don't go buy anything. Try to get the best buys you can in the best areas, in the path of progress, in the path of growth. In areas where you're always going to be able to get good rents and all those other pieces. But real estate is one of the few things now. People that are in the stock market would say the same thing. Over time, stock market keeps going up, but there's times where it goes down, and those are the things that we just need to plan for and make sure that our strategy works regardless. That was a really long answer to your simple question.
That was a good answer. What do you think, Chris Sauber? You're the contrarian of the two.
Well, I agree with what Chris was saying. I think specifically in the next year or two, at least historically speaking, it's an 18-year cycle, and we're due to see a declines in the real estate market. But I agree with his solution to that. Be prepared to hold it for 10 or more years, and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, you only lose if you have to sell during a downturn.
Yep.
And even then, I bought a house in July of 1990, and the day after it closed, I think the market stopped and then dropped for the next 7 years. And I ended up selling that house at a pretty significant loss 7 years later. But I was able to buy something that was, way down at the bottom of the market. And when the market turned, the more expensive property I bought, went much, much higher, and I was much better off for making that move than if I had held on to that home. So it's you just don't go into anything with a blind eye. You look at all the factors and then talk to people that know more, have more experience to make sure you're making the best possible decision.
All right, Chris Heller, the book. Who is the target audience? Who should read it? What do you hope for as the author that somebody picks this up and takes away from it?
I hope. So you asked like 3 or 4 questions there. So
that's how I roll.
Yeah. I have 4 kids between the ages of 22 and 31, and don't tell them this, but I wrote it with them in mind and people their age. So people that are just getting going, starting out in the world. I think that's the group that it'll probably be the most impactful for. But Dan, even like you said, if someone like you go, all right, yeah, these are some good ideas, or I knew this, but I'd forgotten about this. Is a great reminder. So I think anyone in business, anyone in sales, entrepreneurs, people just getting going, it'll appeal to all of them. I think what will happen, and my hope is that people will read it and then they'll buy copies for their kids or someone that works for them or someone on their team that they want to, further develop.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would recommend it for younger people, but also, for those elderly or middle-aged like myself, especially the part about when you're somewhere, like when you choose to go to work, just become completely committed to that. Don't have distractions, like actually do the work. So there's a lot of good reminders in there. So Dominant Thoughts, Chris Heller, check it out. Quick read, guys. You can do it in an hour if you focus, or if you're like me, you can do 2 hours. But thank you so much, Chris Heller, for coming on. We'll have your LinkedIn underneath as well if people want to reach out to you.
Yeah,
and we'll definitely do another one at some point. Chris Sauber, any takeaways or last questions for Chris?
That was a very enjoyable interview. Learned a few things, especially that we're identical twins, according to Dan. So yeah, I really appreciate you.
Well,
very similar.
Thank you guys for having me on. It was a good conversation, a fun conversation. So thanks for making it happen.
Thank you, Chris. Everyone go get the book, link underneath, and go like, subscribe, comment, share. Take care. Bye-bye.